Terminator 2 Judgment Day may very well be one of the best sequels of all time, but oddly enough, it finishes with one surprising loose end you might not have noticed, creating a Skynet-sized plot hole that not a single one of the 4 sequels ever addresses. So listen to me very carefully and let's see what happened. Hey and welcome to Screen Rant, I'm Greg Elliott, and here's the plot hole created in Terminator 2 that all the sequels ignore.
The system goes online on August 4th, 1997. It becomes self-aware at 2:14 a.m. Eastern Time, August 29th.
The first Terminator film had a fairly simple, stable time loop setup, and T2, with James Cameron thankfully still behind the camera, tied everything up pretty neatly, or at least that's how things appear. So you'll remember during the final battle between the T-800 and the T-1000 in the steel mill, one of the T-800's arms gets crushed in a piece of machinery and breaks off, right? Okay, remember that. We'll come back to that in a second. They eventually send the T-1000 flying into the vat of molten steel, and much to John's dismay, the T-800 makes it clear that in order to fully erase all traces of Skynet from the timeline, he's gotta go into the liquid metal too. It's super sad, and even 30 years later, yep, T2 is 30 years old. We are all old. Anyways, 30 years later, that scene is still gutting as Sarah lowers Arnie into the vat and he gives John one last thumbs up. And that's it, that's the end. Supposedly no more Skynet. But wait a second, earlier in the film we find out that it was the arm left behind in the first movie that allowed Cyberdyne to create the technology that eventually led to Skynet. So of course, they threw that arm into the molten steel as well. But what about the arm that just got crunched and torn off? Well, sure, you could argue that that arm was pretty messed up and maybe too far gone to do anything with. That still leaves behind a remnant of future tech in the present that somebody could feasibly get their hands on and start things up all over again. And despite this totally obvious setup, none of the following Terminator movies have ever mentioned, acknowledged, or resolved this. The kinda canon T2 Cybernetic Dawn comic does actually show the arm being found, but even crazier than that is the novelization of Terminator 2 did actually fix the problem, saying straight out that John remembered Terminator's other arm and ran to get it. This time, they weren't leaving anything to chance. It's definitely not in the script, but this at least means someone involved in Terminator 2 at some point noticed this very important detail, but for whatever reason decided it either wasn't worth putting in the movie or clearing it up at any point in any of the sequels. But then, if by melting everything they did succeed and completely avoided Judgment Day, then that would mean that Kyle Reese and the Terminator were never sent back in time in the first place, which would mean that John Connor wouldn't exist at all, which undoes the movies themselves, so maybe the arm being left behind is actually what allows everything to happen in the first place?
Don't know, I've gone cross-eyed.
It seems like you're damned if you do and damned if you don't when it comes to time travel, but the future isn't set as they say, so let's just leave T1 and T2 as an almost perfect story, ignore all the sequels that came after, and walk away happy, okay? Good plan. Alright, thank you for watching Screen Rant, guys. I am Greg Elliott, and I'll be back.